Maurice Nicol, Psychological Commentary, Volume 2, based on his work with Gurdjieff. This is from Birdlip, February 24th, 1945. Commentary on the meaning of aim in the work, part 1 of 3. The idea of help in the work is difficult to understand. At certain moments, we are all helped by life when things go well with us. In connection with this idea of help, Ouspensky once said to us long ago, "Life is too easy for you all." I think he meant what we did not understand, what help in the work sense meant. When life is difficult, we usually feel in some way offended or depressed. Then the help of life is withdrawn from us. We feel upset. Things are not going rightly according to our form of expectancy of life, of how we should expect life to go according to our imagination of it. In that case, we're a function of life, of external. Things are not going rightly according to our form of expectancy of life, of how we expect life should go according to our imagination of it. In that case, we are a function of life, of external circumstances. This is one meaning of the work phrase, we are machines driven by life. But the work is not exactly about this mechanical relation to life. It is not about the mechanical stability or balancing that we have in life, but about a new balance that can be only created by the work on ourselves. The idea of the work is very difficult to grasp for a long time. I often think that none of us grasp it deeply enough. Have you got something in you that can resist the ups and downs in life, or are you simply a creature of external circumstances? It is fairly evident that the work is teaching us in a new way of balancing ourselves when, for instance, it says we must not identify as much as we do, which means that we must not take in life as it presents itself to us by its ever-changing events. Now, supposing you identifying very much when things are good and when things are bad, that is, you feel excited when things are good and depressed when things are bad, then you are a function of life, a machine in the work sense. You're simply in the sea, going up and down with the sea, and you have no boat to sail and direct in the way you wish to go in spite of the weather. Supposing I find that external events do not please me very much and I begin to object to this and that. Then supposing it occurs to me that this is an occasion when I should work on myself and that I should not express my negative emotions, and then I should be very careful and not react mechanically in light of all that I've been taught in the work. You will agree with me that there is a new set of ideas that comes in, namely the ideas taught by the work. In that case, I will begin to apply the work ideas to myself and to a small extent will cease to be a machine, a mechanism driven by life and its external ever-changing events. Supposing I do this once, then it will be easier for me to do it again when more or less the same circumstance arises. This is tasting the work in its quality, but if I never taste the work in this way, nor its quality, and expect merely that because I hear the work, everything is going to be better for me henceforth, then I have a very naive idea of what the work means. To think that the work is going to make everything immediately better for me is very superficial. That's a conception of it. That's very superficial, a very superficial conception of esotericism and its teaching, because the object of esoteric teaching is to produce a profound change in the person that one is, a profound change in the level of being. There are many things in this work that you cannot understand with your head only. There are many things in this work that you cannot understand with your head, but only with your heart. It takes two centers to understand anything. You may work very hard on the formatory side of the work and try to work out each idea endlessly in formatory language. And while this is not entirely wasted, it is absolutely necessary to have a practical feeling about what the ideas mean, that is, an emotional perception of the truth of the work. You may talk and write a long time about what identifying means without any emotional perception of its meaning. Or you may have many thoughts about what lying means and never emotionally perceive what it means. This is because you have not applied this perception to yourself and have not seen lying or insincerity or whatever it is as an absolute fact. Now, tonight I wish to speak about aim once more. You can never make aim unless you see what the work is about, namely about yourself and your relationship to higher centers or real conscience. All aim in the work must be connected with the work. Work on yourself, first of all, work with others, and with the whole meaning of esotericism, that is, the work itself. You should start with the first line of the work in connection with aim. Let me ask you this question. Where do you think you should work on in yourself in connection with the ideas of the work? Have you yet got some fairly clear conception of your life and what you should try to change in your life in view of what you have been taught? Unless you start here at this place, you will never have any practical aim of any practical use in regard to yourself. What is it that you think you ought to change in yourself? And this question is very interesting, and I want to dwell on it for some time. You may, from acquired conscious, from buffers, from pretenses, from false personality, have an idea that you should change something or other. What I want to point out is that if you're guided by your acquired ideas and opinions, you're following the wrong mentor. You must start from what the work teaches because the work replaces real conscious for us as we are. It teaches what real conscious would teach us if it were awakened in us. By having our own idea of what we ought to do or like or aim at, we are bound to go wrong from the point of view of the work because we are acting from our own ordinary knowledge and not from the work knowledge. We will then interfere with the action of the work on us and submit ourselves to all sorts of useless privations and endeavors. Real knowledge is quite different from what we call knowledge. Esoteric knowledge is a special knowledge that we have to learn and gradually understand through an emotional development, which gives us an emotional perception of its meaning. All this has to do with what kinds of effort are required to change our being. Our ordinary ideas, our ordinary knowledge, and will not change our being and probably will only increase our fixity in our present state of being. If you think that you know already, then you will not take the knowledge of this work seriously. If you are quite sure you know what is right and wrong, you will not be able to change. A person must awaken eventually to the authority of the work and must begin to view himself in the light of what it says. You may think, for example, that many of your negative emotions are correct, and you will not call them negative emotions, yet the work teaches that all negative emotions are wrong, no matter what causes them. The work does not look at the causes of negative emotions, but at the fact you are negative. On one occasion, Ouspensky said, "Why do you always explain your negative emotions by the causes that gave rise to them? The whole point is that you're negative, and that is what you have to work on." Now, all of you know how negative emotions, the whole point, or now all know how negative emotions prevent all development, make it impossible for the emotional center to communicate with higher centers. If we could communicate with higher emotional centers, for example, our lives would be utterly different. We would find an entirely new set of rules whereby to live, all for far more subtle than those which we follow in life. We would find, for example, that where we always take a situation in one way, there are 100 or 1,000 ways. all quite different. And that there is no stereotype way of taking the events of life. This is one of the greatest things to understand in connection with the aim and in connection with how we behave. We behave in a rigid, stereotyped way, and so we tend to make rigid, stereotyped aims. There is a certain gaiety in realizing we need not take things always in the same way. But before we can reach this beginning of inner freedom, we must realize that life is events and notice how we react mechanically to each of the different events in life. Looking out through our limited senses, we see life as a number of objects, but we cannot see it as changing events. I often think that this is one of the first difficulties we have in understanding what the work is about. We cannot see events because they only can be mentally and emotionally realized. For example, we see a table, a chair, a tree, a person. These objects are events, are not events necessarily, but supposing the tree falls on the table, kills a person sitting on it, and smashes the chair, that is an event. All these physical objects, which are not events, are suddenly related to one event. A person is not an event, but merely an object.